Rangers fans, welcome to season 3 of Liberty Blue, the essential New York Rangers podcast. I'm Andrew Chelney alongside Nick Zararis. And Nick, the Rangers, they might be cooked.
There's two ways to think about this. So I've spent a lot of my weekend, and my friends and I, we hung out Friday, we watched the game. We hung out Saturday, we watched the game. Saturday night, we were sitting there, we were waiting for the WWE pay-per-view to start, and my friend Chris, he goes, do you think winning against Montreal is enough where everyone's going to calm down for a few days? And I really spent a lot of the last 2 days, like even yesterday when football was on, I was sitting here trying to think what the takeaways from the weekend were going to be, because everybody has to have a take about everything now. There can't just be a standalone, okay, they won one game, they ended a losing streak, let's see how they respond on Monday against the Devils, because I think you'll glean a lot more from how they play against the Devils tonight than you ever will of the way they played Montreal. Because we can come out and say it. Montreal's not a very good hockey team. For the Rangers to get into that kind of rock fight game where I don't want to say they kind of embarrassed themselves, like trying to engage in like thuggery with a team of children, but like they were very clearly trying to bully a team of children into winning that hockey game. And it almost didn't work.
And they almost blew it.
They still almost blew a game where they were physically dominating and bullying a bunch of children, for all of the posturing about how tough and gritty a performance that was. Kirby Dach didn't have to answer for hurting Brett Berard. Did the Rangers do anything about that? No, they didn't. Sure. The after the whistle stuff, the scrums, Will Cooley sweeping the leg like the Karate Kid, it's great and all. But at the same time, we're in the mud against Montreal here, who I don't know if everyone's aware of this, is not a good hockey team. They've got some nice individual players, but for the Rangers to get that desperate where they kind of need to resort to every last measure, needing power play goals, and then needing Will Cooley to bail their asses out. What does it say about this team that Will Cooley seems to be the only person on a nightly basis with motivation and energy who's trying to make plays? Will Cooley is second on the team in points. He is still on his ELC, and he is second on the team in points. He is the only person who takes the puck to the net. He is the only person who engages in puck battles below the boards with some offensive talent. The pass he makes to Kakko to win the game is an incredible pass. And instead, I'm reading, Trouba started he set the tone. He started a fight with Josh Anderson. Great. Does that win the fucking hockey game? I don't understand how we spent 4 days with, they got to get rid of somebody, and Trouba is one of the main candidates to get rid of someone, and all he had to do was fight somebody, and all of a sudden, he showed a lot of leadership. He was great. There's no object.
He didn't even win the fight.
That's the other thing.
He got dumpstered by Josh Anderson. Guys,
do you think he went out of his way for it to be Josh Anderson because Larry wrote the column?
Because that's Brooks's guy.
Do you think that there's a non-zero chance? There is at least. I'm putting it between 1% and 5% that Jacob Trouba is aware that Larry Brooks really likes Josh Anderson's game
maybe.
And went out of his way. I know on the broadcast, Sam and Joe had said, we assume this is because Montreal wants some revenge for what happened to Caden Gooley the last time these two teams played where Trouba laid him out. Sure, whatever. But the simple fact is Montreal is not a good hockey team. And it took what seemed like a Herculean effort to beat them in regulation. Like, how does anyone feel good about that? I can't imagine coming away from that game feeling like we've solved anything. You don't know about the injuries. You don't know as far as Berard. We'll see if Heedle's good. We'll see if Kakko's good. Not Kakko, excuse me. See if Kreider's good. But one win against a bad team does not override the big issues here. There are still a lot of underlying issues. It's nice that they won the game. They stopped the losing streak. But at the same time, we still got the same problems. If they're playing a decent team, they don't win that game. Tonight, Look, they beat the Devils tonight. We can have a conversation about they've stopped the bleeding. But if they lose tonight, how different is it that they beat Montreal? We got to have some object permanence here. That's my big gripe.
And even if they beat the Devils, a lot of it depends on how.
That I won't agree with. That I won't agree with because they have been so piss poor that they can't even win games by accident the way they kind of always have.
I guess.
So I'll push back there slightly, but I get what you're saying.
I tweeted this after the second period of the Habs game, thinking, okay, wait, the Rangers surely won't blow the lead against one of the worst teams in the league, right? Well, I said ultimately the real test is going to be against the Devils because they can beat up on a Habs team as much as they want, but if they get lapped by New Jersey, then the win doesn't matter. Essentially, that's what I said. It's good that the Rangers were showing a lot of emotion, that they were, they were going after, they were trying to rally the team. They were trying to hit everybody inside. They were trying to fight people. They were trying to essentially overcorrect from the, and swing the pendulum the other way with, okay, well, we weren't fighting anybody before. Now we're going to fight everybody. We're going to hit everybody. And maybe that'll, get the team to wake up and win some hockey games here. It worked against Montreal barely with 22 seconds to go. And, they needed a double minor power play to score the goal. But you know what? They won. Fine. Now today is kind of the real litmus test of what does that win against Montreal start for the Rangers? Because if the Devils win today, it started nothing. And all it did was, okay, you barely beat one of the worst teams in the league. And now you play the Devils, a team that has bounced. We talked about it before the season that they were going to be one of the better teams in the league, and now they are. And you play them today, and if you lose, well, then you're back essentially back at square one. You're back at square one. You've lost 5 in a row. You beat a really bad team. Okay, good.
By the skin of your teeth,
right? Barely. And now you come in New Jersey and you lose again. Now it might just be DEFCON 1 because I tweeted this the other day too. It's like, again, this was against Philly, I think it was. Sam Rosen was criticizing.
Sam and Joe were like genuinely frustrated against the Flyers. Like 10 minutes into that game,
when Sam Rosen, we love Sam Rosen on the show. He's one of the best people on the planet. Sam Rosen does not.
Sam is the most patient person alive.
People.
He will. Right. He doesn't want to criticize anyone. He's the most patient person alive.
Yes.
10 minutes into that game.
Yeah. Sam Rosen does not love to criticize players when during broadcasts. So when Sam Rosen and Joe Micheletti were both hammering Zibanejad and Trocheck and the defensive effort and all this thing, it's like, that's DEFCON 1. Like, how much more of a, oh my God, this is so bad, when the broadcast team that never says, negative things about the team is really highlighting how negative they are. That, like, you can't really get much worse than that. And if they lose tonight and, we shut the process again, and the win against Montreal doesn't do anything. But if they do win today, okay, well,
you bought some more breathing room.
Then, that's essentially what happens. And then you can, let's say the Rangers go on a little bit of a winning streak here and they build some points and they either play better or luck into wins by accident. Then you can treat the Habs win, I guess, as a game, against St. Louis a few years ago when they saved Gallant's job.
Because that's really the question here. We talked about this last week about what your courses of action were, and we both agreed it wasn't realistic that they were going to trade Trouba or Kreider this early in the season. We both agreed that based on the way the NHL as a league operates, the way that, frankly, there just isn't enough cap space around, even if you went out of your way to try and find trade candidates, the only teams that are relatively competitive that have cap space are not markets that I imagine Trouba or Kreider are going to be able to be traded to. They both have 15-team no-trade lists, and I imagine both Calgary and Winnipeg are on those lists. I imagine those guys are. I know Trouba's not going back to Winnipeg, and I can go out on a limb and imagine Chris Kreider has Winnipeg on his list as well. I would say the same thing for Calgary, and I forget the third team who had enough cap space to absorb them entirely. But that's neither here nor there. You make that you have only so many tools in your toolbox as a general manager, as a coach, to try and motivate a group. As a coach, you can move guys down in the lineup, change their ice time, change their special teams. You can healthy bomb them. As a general manager, you can do the whisper campaigns. You can send certain players down. But we have seen, and if this is what we're operating under, that the lineup card is Laviolette's, Drury's not sending people down. He's not waiving people. But short of waiving Jacob Trouba, short of firing the coach, there aren't really a lot of recourses here other than telling this group to get it together. It's too early in the year for any type of significant trade. Sure. If you want to say there's like a Kakko trade or a Keandre Miller trade, one of the restricted free agent guys who doesn't make as much money, sure. I think that's a lot more doable than, say, Kreider or Trouba. But at the same time, if you're taking away someone who is young and cheap, you're going to need someone young and cheap coming back in, or you're going to need smaller assets. You're going to need developmental things or picks. And we know the Rangers don't want draft picks and they don't want prospects. They're trying to win right now. So there's not really a whole lot you can do here. And look, I got into a lot of arguments over the weekend with people who kept trying to tell me, well, I thought you didn't like Gallant. Why are you saying Drury's going to throw Laviolette under the bus the way he did Gallant? Drury 100% threw Gallant under the bus. Gallant, look, I know everybody likes to say, well, Gallant wasn't Drury's first choice. Then why'd he hire him? If Gallant was not his first choice, if his first choice was Mike Sullivan, who was employed by another team, and his second choice was Rod Brindamore, who was employed by another team, then why did he hire Gallant? If he didn't really feel that strong an affection for the guy to hire him, to make him his coach, and to make him the sacrificial lamb, his flaws are still the same. I put these together today, and I wanted to talk about this. These graphs, I put together two simple graphics because I want to illustrate a specific point here. This is the most common lineup from the year Drury took over. So this is the this is the lineup for this season. I'm going to go back to the other one, but on the screen right now, if you're watching on YouTube, this is the lineup right now. The players that are in color are players that Chris Drury acquired. The backup goalie, the fourth line center, and the first line, now third line right wing, who they got for a mid-round pick. Mika Zibanejad, Chris Kreider, Artemi Panarin, Vincent Trocheck's supposed to be in color, but this graphic is wrong. Lafreniere, Cooley, Hedl, Kakko, Brodzinski, Rempe, Miller, Fox, Zach Jones, Trouba, Schneider, all of those guys were here before Drury was here. And then where's the other one? This is the other one that is fully in color. If it'll buffer 1 second. This is the main thing I wanted to talk about. This is the roster from 2021. This is what Chris Drury inherited, okay? Buchnevich on the first line right wing, he's gone. Ryan Strome, second line center, he's gone. Colin Blackwell, third line right wing, he's gone. The entire fourth line, Howden, Kevin Rooney, Kravtsov, all are gone. The defense, Hayek and Brendan Smith are obviously no longer here. The backup goalie is no longer Georgiev. The point here being, they have not done a lot over the years. Chris Drury, through his decisions, has told you he feels good about this group. He thinks it doesn't require a lot of tinkering because he has only added supplementary pieces. So when we get to what felt like DEFCON 1 last week, where everybody no-showed on Friday against the Flyers, at a certain point, he needs to look at himself. He can't just saber rattle and say, well, we can't be complacent. And obviously, it's always going to be easier to fire the coach than fix the roster. And that was my point about what I said over the weekend about throwing Laviolette under the bus the way Gallant was thrown under the bus. I don't think Gallant's a great coach, but the flaws of that team were obvious. They were not good defensively. They didn't drive possession 5-on-5. They were overly reliant on the goaltender. We knew that. These are still the same issues 2 years later. Yeah, they had a great year last year, but the old days is the old days. Last year doesn't really matter. Unless you won something, you don't get to use that in your argument, because at a certain point, if you fired Gallant because the expectation was we're winning the Stanley Cup and you don't win the Stanley Cup, well, eventually you only get to hire so many coaches. And that's where I'm at right now. It really does feel like, barring something immaculate, they're going to be a slightly above average team. They'll hang around because they have enough high-end talent. They're not making progress. That's really the big thing. We talked about that a lot last week, the idea of you want to build throughout the season, keep raising what your average quality game is, so that by the time the deadline comes around, you're starting to get close to peaking, then you drop the reinforcements in, and then you peak as the playoffs start. And the Rangers did a great job of that. They won the first 6 playoff games last year. They got out to a nice lead in the Carolina series. It got a little hairy there, but they won that series in 6 games. That is last year. You only get to do that so many times. And then you don't get to do what they do. It's funny. 5 minutes before we started recording, you got the text from the Rangers. Save 10% on $200 tickets. Or Friday, they had a Black Friday deal. No fees. It was $200 to sit in the 400s. $200 to sit behind the Billy Joel banner. And they are telling us that, we're close. We're close.
It's really funny. And the thing, too, is the Rangers really called Drury's bluff with that memo because he put that out. Well, other GMs leaked it. Whatever storyline you want to follow. In any case, word got out, right, that Chris Drury was looking to trade players. The Rangers followed it up with more miserable performances.
Oh, absolute stinkers! That Philadelphia game was an atrocity.
It was awful. The fact that there wasn't a move either directly after that game or after one of those ridiculously bad efforts makes me realize that Drury wasn't anywhere close to actually getting a trade done. Because if he did get a trade done, he would have been held
out of the lineup, first of all.
Right, exactly. They would have, somebody would have been, maybe, I don't know, maybe Riley Smith was healthy scratched for that. We don't know that. But the fact of the matter is that, Drury essentially scared his players.
It made it worse.
Well, if you continue to play badly, I will trade you. They continued to play badly. And he didn't trade him. And again, I don't know how close he got. Maybe there were actual real conversations going on, and maybe it wasn't one of the big guys. Maybe
Zendaya's coming to Christmas coming over for Christmas for this year with me. We're in talks. The same way the Rangers are in talks to trade Jacob Trouba, the same way Zendaya's in talks to come over for Christmas.
And Drury played his hand way too early. Way too early because he didn't have a trade. Why are you scaring your players that we are going to trade you when two of your worst performing players have ridiculously bad contracts that are immovable and they're not going to be traded? You could, as much as I love Brooks for calling out Trouba and and all of these things that that have been, but we've been talking about for the past 3+ seasons now. That's all great and dandy. But where is Trouba going to get traded to realistically? Who is going to take on the albatross of a contract? 1 and 2, everybody knows the Rangers don't want Jacob Trouba. The Rangers are probably going to have to add sweeteners to get rid of him to find somebody to play on the roster in return. The league knows. The Rangers want to get rid of Trouba. The league knows Zibanejad is cooked beyond a shadow of a doubt. Zibanejad has been so bad this season. He's been so cooked, and he's got a no move clause until halfway through the next presidency. Where is he going? He's not going anywhere. So if you are going to scare your best players or your highest paid players, you at least have to have something in place in case they call your bluff, because they will, because they know their contracts are bad. They called your bluff. You got nothing to show for it. They beat a Montreal team barely, one of the worst teams in the league. They had a 3-1 lead, by the way, multiple power play goals. Not a whole lot of 5-on-5. Okay, that's fine. They had their power play was miserable the last few games. They finally got it going. Okay, sure, that's fine. You had a 3-1 lead. You blew it against one of the worst teams in the league. You had a 2-goal lead in the third period, and you played so poorly, you blew it. And you needed Kirby Dach's double minor against Zibanejad to barely score the game-winning goal with 22 seconds to go. What are we doing here?
It's funny you mention that, because I'm going to read something that The Athletic published on October 31st. Quote, all the arrows still point to a Jacob Trouba trade next offseason to get his $8 million off the books. The brief, futile attempt to get him to waive his no-trade clause and leave this past season was a bit ill-advised, but Trouba and his camp understand that this is going to happen next summer with or without their input. There should be enough interest in Trouba on an expiring deal that Drury won't have to retain salary or include major assets like a mid to high draft pick to get the deal done. Saving that $8 million will be a huge relief, though that's another roster spot the Rangers will need to fill. Now, in The Athletic, yesterday, quote, Jacob Trouba, the other named party in the note, hasn't been hitting much lately. He hasn't been talking much to the media, except when he has to answer for the GM trying to trade him for the second time in 4 months. The idea of Trouba tossing his helmet and yelling at his own bench to wake the bleep up as he did around this time 2 seasons ago after a huge hit and fight seem absurd at the moment. You can call that indifferent behavior unprofessional, unbecoming of an $8 million a year guy who wears the C. All true. But think about how we got here. Drury tried to put the cart before the horse in June, attempting to force Trouba into a move before the player was ready and before any other team, the Red Wings included, had given much thought to acquiring him. That poisoned the situation. Now it seems irreparable. No one is trading for Trouba with him playing like this. Not now, and maybe not this summer without a decent sweetener in the deal. Please tell me what changed in 4 weeks. Please tell me what changed in 4 weeks. This is what Jacob Trouba's been for 4 years. This is what he has been for 4 years. And just because he doesn't talk to the media now he's a bad guy? Now he can't be traded because he refuses to give you canned quotes? I mean, give me a break. I cannot deal with the lack of object permanence here. They consistently are trying to pretend they didn't have a trade set up, and then they were stupid enough to telegraph they were trying to get the trade done. And then, because it was 3 days before the deadline for his no-trade list was submitted, he was able to out-leverage the team. I do not understand how we're doing revisionist. This happened 4 months ago. We were all there. We walked through this step by step on the last episode. That Friday night, there was building up expectation. Saturday afternoon, during the second day of the draft, by end of day, expect this to get done. Silence. Well, he might not get reported to the team that acquires him. And that was it. I can't, man. I constantly feel like no one has any object permanence. Like they're trying to play got your nose with us. But like I'm 27 years old. You can't do got your nose with a 27-year-old. That's the thing here. They are trying to tell us one thing when it's not true. It is fundamentally not true.
It really is. And a lot of people too, they write stuff like this, and it's really, you can tell who watches the team and who doesn't by how they write about Jacob Trouba.
Yes.
Because, if you've watched this team for a while, the first thing, if you wanted to defend Trouba, if you wanted to, say, oh, he's this, he's that for the team, whatever, they never lead with his defense. The people that actually watch Jacob Trouba play, regardless of how much you love Jacob Trouba, if you're going to defend him, the first thing that you lead off with is not his defense, because defensively he has been bad for multiple seasons now. And if you don't feel that way, you're either lying to yourself or you haven't been watching the games. Point blank. He's been bad defensively. We can all objectively agree to that because that's what he's been. So the people that still talk about his defense and that he has been underperforming lately haven't been watching the team. And those that have been criticizing his defense, finally, thank you for joining joining the party a few years late. I'd rather you join late than never at all, but that's we have to pick our battles here sometimes. It's great that you're highlighting his poor defense now. I wish you would have done it, as it was happening throughout the whole ordeal, but that's neither here nor there. The problem is you can't, has a captain ever been waived before? I don't know if a captain of an NHL team has ever been waived. I don't. That'd
probably happened at some point, just by
maybe.
Like sheer volume. We've been doing this for 100+ years. At this point, I feel like some schmuck back in the Second World War needed to go to the Navy, so his team waived him. Probably something along those lines.
I don't think so though, because a lot of those contracts were like frozen, and I don't know if they were full on. I don't know. It's a good Cadillac trivia question, if you will. But the issues here is like this is essentially an unmovable object meets an unstoppable force. Of Jacob Trouba doesn't want to be there. The Rangers don't want him there. Everybody knows the Rangers don't want Jacob Trouba there, so they won't trade for him. Everybody knows Mika Zibanejad is cooked. The Rangers know Mika Zibanejad is cooked, I would think.
I do want to talk about that because I do have thoughts on that. But go ahead, finish
we'll talk about that in a second. He also has a no-move clause that he definitely won't waive for another 6 years. 6 years! Like, Jesus, man. And those are two of your biggest problems, not only on the ice, but also cap-wise. They make a lot of money. And they have been your worst performing players on the ice this season.
It's funny.
So, like,
it's funny you say that.
You know, you're going to, again, you're going to go out and say, oh, we're going to, might trade Kreider. We might do this. We might do that. Okay, well, the Rangers turn around and continue to play as poorly, if not even worse, after that memo got leaked. And you sat around and, I don't know, maybe you watched angrily from the press box. That was your master plan. Like, if stuff like that leaks, you better damn be prepared to have something.
You got to follow
up
through
your sleeve. You have to. Otherwise, they called your bluff, and now they know that memo was essentially a paper tiger.
That's the thing, man. You have paths to doing things. You can do the carrot or the stick, and this general manager seems to be very fond of the stick when it comes to trying to solve issues, whether it be berating people, singling them out, in the case of Gaudreau, waving them. But it's very frank. Somebody tweeted this, and I went and fact-checked it, and if you're watching on YouTube, I'll flash in the graphic. They've played 455 5-on-5 minutes this year without Zibanejad, Trouba, or Lindgren on the ice. They are winning those minutes 25-9. In the minutes with any of those guys on the ice, they are being outscored. It's really simple. This isn't some grand conundrum as to what's not working. They have 3 players who play too many minutes. The coach refuses to change the way he's deploying the lineup. Now, maybe we're starting to see that tide turn. We saw that Zibanejad Kreider line take less minutes, get a little bit less minutes, go later in line rushes, whatever. You saw the lines at morning skate this morning. Okay, you go and look at the time on ice from the game against Montreal. It's still, Trocheck, Lindgren, Panarin, Zibanejad, Kreider. Those are your top. Those are 3. Trocheck, Lindgren, Panarin, Zibanejad are 3 through 5. If you want to say Panarin's entitled to the benefit of the doubt, sure, yeah, whatever. But we can't continue. And look, I know they had more power plays on Saturday than they've had in the recent games, so that's why Trocheck and Zibanejad probably get more minutes than they probably do. Why are we playing Lindgren 21-28? Why is Lindgren second most in time on ice amongst the defensemen? And you'll say, well, they had to kill penalties. He's a penalty killer. Can you try other guys? Can you try something else? And because, again, this is a chicken or the egg. Are they good at killing penalties, or are they just on the penalty kill? And look, I know the Rangers have a good penalty kill. They're second in the league the last time I looked. They do. They genuinely do have a good penalty kill. But that should not be the reason Ryan Lindgren has the second most minutes of defenseman on your team. Schneider's been their best defenseman all year, and he can't get more minutes than Trouba or than Lindgren. And as much as I would like to say K'Andre Miller has the potential to turn this around at some point, again, it is what it is. But Zibanejad specifically, I think, is interesting because this is a player who's really only had 2 really, really bad runs in his NHL career. That stretch last year from December through about mid-February. And then 2021, the year he came back, he had COVID. He played terrible. That was his worst year as a pro, was 2021. They gave him the big extension that year, so it looked doubly as bad, that he was underperforming, that he got paid. And I talked about this the other day in regards to the Oilers on the Oilers podcast I do, that they'd had really bad shooting luck, 3-4% for guys like Zach Hyman, who only has like 2 goals and we're in December, what have you. But for someone like Zibanejad, it is so clear he is a confidence player where if he's feeling good about his game, he can get nuclear. That 5-goal game against Washington was the apex of the best season of his NHL career. He set a career high in goals in a season. He only played like 57, 58 games. That was a real testament to kind of the high-end ceiling of his production. And now sitting here, The one-timer just isn't there. The one-timer not being there is the most telltale sign to me that he is so lost in his own head that I don't think he is as bad as he's played this season. But again, like we just said with Miller, if you play like this, eventually that's what you are. I don't think he is fundamentally broken. I don't think he's unfixable. But I think very clearly they need to dial back his minutes. They need to play him lower in the lineup. They need to try and get him away from the other team's best players and do whatever they can to manufacture something out of him, because it's unacceptable to be playing this guy as much as he is with as little production as he's having and keep doing it. You know,
on both ends of the ice, too. Like, he's not scoring, but also he's not defending either.
Yeah.
He's not doing anything on either end of the ice, and that is one of the biggest issues, too. It's like, okay, his lack of scoring is a problem, and we'd like him to score more, yes. But if he was at least shutting down the other team's best players, it would be a lot more digestible. But he's not doing anything on the ice. He's not scoring. He's not defending well. He's not doing much of anything. And that's the biggest, worry that I have is, okay, well, I'm surely he's not this cooked. Surely he can still score. Surely he can still defend. But at a certain point, when you've done it for months now, I'm gonna stop believing it and just think that this is you. That this is how you play now, because this is all you have been done, and you're not even. If you were like 40, it'd be one thing, but you're not. So you gonna fix this, or what are we doing here?
One other thing I wanted to talk about on today's show was we're all very aware that Peter Laviolette has a similar trajectory in a lot of his tenures. They have a great first year. Typically, his first year is the best year of his tenure. The only exception to that was Carolina. They won the Stanley Cup in his second year of his tenure. Other than that, for the most part, he's typically been a starts hot, cools off as it goes along until it becomes so irreparably toxic that he has to be gotten rid of. At the end in Philly, especially the end at Washington, that's what happened. The veterans didn't get held accountable.
Nashville as well.
Yeah, Nashville as well. The younger players didn't get enough opportunities. All my Capitals fan friends kept telling me, sure, this first year's great. You're having a great time. Wait till next year when he undoubtedly stops holding veterans accountable and doesn't give young guys enough opportunity. We'll see how his survival instinct goes. But I went and looked. On this day, December 2nd, every single one of his tenures, the average record he has is 13-7-3. Right now, the Rangers are 13-9-1. We are very much within the parameters of what a standard second Peter Laviolette season is. And I know there was one person I was talking to on Saturday in my replies who said, well, they won the President's Trophy last year. They went to the conference finals. How are you this worried about right now? Well, first of all, that was last year.
Right.
That's over with. We can't revisit that. We can't drop that team into the NHL right now. As great as last year was, as fun as last year was, I understand how incredibly difficult it is to win a Stanley Cup. It is the most difficult championship trophy to win in all of sports because of the variance of the playoffs, the way hockey is. I fundamentally understand that. But this group is old and expensive. I saw somebody tweet, well, a lot of their young guys are still pretty good. Hedl, Kakko, Lafreniere, Schneider, Miller, Fox, Shesterkin, what have you. Other than Fox, none of those guys, even including Lafreniere, I don't think is a first line caliber, carry the team type guy. Shesterkin's different as a goalie, but like Hedl, Kakko, Lafreniere is not a first line on a Stanley Cup winning team. I think if you have good enough players, Lafreniere can be a guy on a first line, but he's not the best guy on a team. And that's kind of the Rangers' issue right now. And it's weird because for a long time it was, well, they've got the quality pieces. Where's the depth? Now you could make an argument that their depth pieces are better than their big name guys. Cooley's been their best forward this year. Hedl, when he's played, has been their best center this year. Kakko is having and on pace to have the best year of his NHL career.
Yeah.
Cooley has more points than Trocheck right now. Cooley has more points than Zibanejad and Kreider right now. If the big guys are underperforming this badly, and there are still years to go on these contracts, and these guys are only in their early 30s, where is the flexibility to continue improving the roster? And everyone likes to say, well, the general manager, he doesn't have a lot of flexibility. That's his fault. He made the decisions that hamstrung his lack of flexibility. He doesn't get to have it both ways. At some point, it does become Drury's fault that he can't improve the roster. It's hard. That's why he has the job. You and I love to make the joke about quoting Chuck Fletcher about why they didn't clear cap space to try and get Johnny Gaudreau 3 summers ago. It was too hard to find someone to take Ristolainen's contract. You are a professional general manager, a job which has no qualifications. Technically speaking, you could hire anyone to be an NHL general manager. There is not a certification. There's no test. You could hire someone who is on a team right now. If you wanted, you could make Brad Marchand your NHL general manager in 25 minutes from now. All you'd have to do is the phone call, the paperwork, and he could do it. There is not some grand secret to this job. The Rangers have built an inefficient roster. They are dealing with the repercussions of that, and they have made it worse because they don't have, the traditional leader you would expect to kind of ready the ship. And look, if we're really doing why would Trouba help the team if they want to get rid of him thing, he's not that good of a leader. Like, at a certain point, can we stop talking out of both sides of our mouths? We've spent 3 years, I shouldn't say we. The people who cover the team and the team have spent 3 seasons gassing up what a great leader he is, how much everyone in the room respects him. If he's throwing, if he's removing himself, he's detaching himself preemptively to prepare for next summer, wherever he ends up, he's not that good of a leader if he's leaving these guys adrift to figure it out. And we've been saying that for years, that how good can this group really be if we need these token nonsense fights and these big hits to fire them up? I understand once in a while, work sucks. I don't really want to be here. But if this is like every 15, 20 games, we need one of these moments. Let me tell you something, Andrew. There's no Connor Mackey on this team.
Yeah. At least Connor Mackey's one job is to do that. And Jacob Trouba's job allegedly is to do more than that.
That was the funny thing I was thinking about when I was reading that column Staple wrote about where actually go. If all the Rangers need is a plug, block shots, and fight, we can get one of those for $725. It doesn't need to cost $8 million a year.
Right.
We can go get a Curtis McDermott to go run around and chase people for $725 against the cap, as opposed to $8 million, and then we could go get somebody who's actually good.
It would be nice.
I'm at a loss, man. I really am. I don't understand how it's this difficult. I really don't. Like, anyone who has watched this team for a number of seasons, these are the same issues. It's just Fox isn't hard carrying and Panarin's not hard carrying. That's the only difference. The goaltending has been fine. As much as people want to complain about Shesterkin, as much as people want to say, well, he's not worth the contract, whatever, him, Cooley, and maybe Braden Schneider, Hedel, if you want to say, maybe Panarin are the only ones absolved of some guilt right now. Other than that, everyone's got to play better, man. This team is massively underperforming their talent.
Cup contenders?
I mean, no one is that good right now. Like, that's the one thing, and we said this last week too, the strongest argument for this team is that no one looks all of that good. They didn't get destroyed against Carolina, which I thought was moderately encouraging, and then they followed that up with the absolute stinker against the Flyers, but no one's that good. That's your strongest argument, and frankly, that's why I don't think the general manager has the balls to make the big swing. He thinks that all this needs is a little steadying of the ship. They'll rattle off 3 out of 5. They'll get firmly back in the mix, and then he can go out and get another wing. He can go get one more defenseman.
Another swing at the bat, and to see, hey, Riley Smith got held his crash because he can't get Zibanejad and Kreider going, but surely this time, we can find another right winger that could wake these guys up. No, that's all it takes is another guy to come in and fix this problem. Surely it's up to the right winger and the 75 that they've tried so far, and not on the 2 players that have been here throughout the whole process. Surely it's on the new guy. Yeah.
Two things off of that, because I think it's interesting. Number one, when I was a kid, I found the expression rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic hilarious. Like, as a 6 or a 7-year-old, I thought that was genuinely the funniest joke I had ever heard. But that's what we're doing here. The Rangers have a massive gaping hole in the hull of this ship, and we're just rearranging the deck chairs while the band is tuning up to play. That's all we're doing here. They have had moments. Last year was great. but it was last year. You don't get to do that when you say our expectation is this. And then number 2. It's untradeable. No one is immortal. The league that had the greatest player in the history of the sport traded 3 times. If Wayne Gretzky can be traded multiple times, anyone can be traded. And unfortunately, a byproduct of that is emotional baggage. You know, if this franchise can buy out Henrik Lundqvist, if it can trade Matt Zuccarello, as good and as important,
traded Leach on his birthday,
traded Brian Leach
on his birthday. Like the Rangers have done this. If they've done this before, why can't they do it now with players that don't have nearly the aura and the history and the lore behind them? Why is now all of a sudden so difficult? That doesn't make any sense.
Like, I don't think that's the holdup here from like the front office side. I'm saying that from like a narrative and like conversation perspective. Sure. Chris Kreider is one of the most important Rangers of this era. He's top 5, top 10 in most of the franchise statistical categories. At a certain point, he is no longer going to be a Ranger, whether that is by trade, retirement, whatever. I have never had the same connection to him as a player as other people have. That's whatever. Everyone has their own favorite players. That there's no moral failing if someone is your favorite player and they don't perform well, whatever. But eventually you need to make business decisions, and we don't get to have it both ways. You know, that's been the theme of this episode, is wanting it both ways. You don't get to waive Gaudreau with 15 minutes notice and then do the Trouba thing and be like, I wonder why this isn't working so well. I wonder why they don't trust me. I wonder why they're all playing like they're walking on eggshells right now. You don't get to do it both ways. And look, I don't think it's weighing particularly hard on Kreider. He has always been, for lack of a better term, emotionally unavailable. He's not given the most insightful, detailed, whatever. You know, his feature with Molly, I thought was really interesting. That was good reading. It gave me a little bit of insight to him as a person. But like, if they trade Kreider and it makes the team better, I'm fine with that. At a certain point, it's about winning or it isn't. And for too much of the last 10 to 15 years, the Rangers haven't always been about winning. And it's maddening to sit here. You know, they're charging you $200 to sit behind the Billy Joel banner. And we're sitting here, well, it's kind of hard being mean sometimes. Chris, you played professional sports. All we hear about is how great a winner you were in Little League. You won a Calder, you won a cup, you were a captain in Buffalo, you were a captain here. Show some leadership. Don't throw other people under the bus. Show your face in front of the media and don't make Peter answer for you. Don't make the guys. That was a big talking point last week. The fact that they lost that game and Panarin was the one who went and talked to the media, the guy who uses a translator some of the time, who doesn't have the firmest grasp of English. We're making him go out there. Not Kreider, not Zibanejad, not Trouba. You know, at a certain point, it trickles down. And my one Islander fan friend texted me Friday night and he was like, so would you rather have it the Lou way where you don't know what's happening until opening night? Or would you rather have it the way you're doing it where the general manager is trying to act like a tough guy and isn't one? And I really had to think about that for a little while because it's so clearly the case here. He wants to project that he's this cold, ruthless, winner at all cost type guy, but he doesn't actually do that. Yeah. He just postures as one.
I'm not a fan of the way Lou does general managerial things. On top of the complete lack of any change ever for the Islanders. This is the same team that's been on the ice for the past 5 seasons, and they haven't won anything, and yet they're still here. Also, the no facial hair thing is absolutely absurd. And please, Lou, stop doing that. That's very silly of you. The Yankees too. Stop. I mean, come on. You gotta not do that anymore. But this is a guy that is in the school recess playground, acting like if you come close to me, I'm gonna punch back. I'm gonna push you back, and then someone tests him and says, "Oh yeah, what are you gonna do?" And then he doesn't do anything, and then he goes and hides. That's what Drury is acting like right now. I'm not saying that's what he is, but before anybody.
Can anyone get a 20 on him? Can we get a picture of him holding up the newspaper? We never see him in public, and he gets to start accountability.
It's just one of those things where the team is calling his bluff and Drury doesn't have a response.
Nope.
That's really the most telling thing about this. And the Rangers can watch this and hear us talk about it. I don't know if they are or whatever. I don't know, whatever. But they, PR might take a look at this and say, "Oh, well, they're wrong and all these things." Or I don't know. I'm just making things up in my head. Jury might see this and go, "Oh, they're wrong. I had something in place, but I can't say anything." Okay, well, that's what it looks like. To your players, that's what it looks like. To the public, that's what it looks like. To other teams, it's what it looks like. That you played your hand too early. The team called your bluff, and in return, you did nothing. How true that is behind closed doors right now doesn't matter, because this is the perception from everybody outside of those doors. And also internally as well, because you have Trouba out to lunch, doesn't want to be there, doesn't want to do leadership things besides fight Josh Anderson, Brooks's boy. And everyone else is still kind of not playing well. Again, they barely beat one of the worst teams in the league, and they blew a 2-goal lead in the third period, and they barely hung on. They somehow got a double minor, and they scored a power play goal to save the game, because that could have gotten even worse.
Tonight's interesting from the perspective. Yeah. I went to the Devil game last Wednesday. I saw the Devils in person, and the Blues pummeled them, absolutely pummeled them. And the thing is, the Blues play in a way that is the antithesis of what the Rangers do. The Blues cycle, the Blues forecheck. They keep fast teams on their heels. You know what? We spent 7 games talking about 2 years ago about, hey, if you want to beat the Devils, you got to make their defensemen turn around. You got to pressure them. You got to make them play defense. And the Rangers didn't do that. And the Rangers right now they're trying to get back to walking. Right now they're crawling. They were able to win. Not the easiest, not whatever. They won. Okay. This is an opportunity. You don't have Berard, which stinks because he had been a nice shot in the arm. We advocated for that 3 weeks ago, that, hey, you need to get somebody up here, even if it's just to moonlight, to give them a little bit of juice. And he was doing that. He was moving.
Berard's been good. Also, he's been one of the best forwards. By the way, this dude's had 3 games in the NHL, or 4 games, or whatever it is. This is his first taste of the NHL, and he's been one of your best forwards, guys. What are we doing here? He's outperforming most of the lineup. What's going on? This is ridiculous.
The team fundamentally needs to find another gear. It's that simple. If I'm at a point where even I feel like Adam Fox is playing poorly, you're not going to find a more staunch defender of Adam Fox's game dating back to 2019. I wrote things in November of 2019 that, yeah, this guy's going to be good. Trust me, I see it. And right now, it's not great. The one last thing I wanted to get in here before we wrap up for the show, the 4 Nations face-off rosters are going to come out. It's going to be very funny when Bill Guerin picks Trocheck and Kreider for Team USA, because then we'll fundamentally know he did no scouting at all this year. He just picked guys in the summer who had good years last year, because neither of those guys deserves to be on this team. I know there's a rumor floating around that Trocheck got picked. I would take Brock Nelson before I would take Vincent Trocheck right now. I would take Dylan Larkin before I would take Vinny Trocheck right now. And I think it speaks to what we always talk about, that the general managers are really rooted in their ways, that they don't really want to do that extra work. It's why all of this stuff doesn't happen until January, February, March. And it's just, everyone gets so caught up in things that don't matter. It's great that Trocheck wins face-offs, that he hits, that he blocks shots. His defense has been horrendous the last 3 years, but he still has the perception of being a great defensive center because he hits people. Go look. The Rangers give a lot back when he's out there with Panarin. That is not a defensive specialist the way he is cast as one. It's the same thing with Trouba. The Rangers acquired a guy coming off a 50-point season and tried to tell us all he's a shutdown defenseman. What? Did we watch him in Winnipeg? There's a reason he played with Dustin Byfuglien and Josh Morrissey And what the hell was Buddy's name? He went to Buffalo afterwards. He was really tall. Not Tyler Myers. He was left.
The other really tall
Christian Ehrhoff.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
San Jose Sharks legend Christian Ehrhoff.
Yeah, Christian Ehrhoff. There was an Enstrom or an Enstrom in there as well that played for the Jets as well.
Tobias Edstrom?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah. Trouba was never the defensive guy on his pair.
Side note, by the way, that we are completely psychopaths. Completely off the rails.
Not really. We're hockey people. Those aren't crazy deep polls.
Tobias Edstrom, maybe.
That's not that crazy of a deep poll. I mean, granted, I remember that.
He hasn't played the NHL in years.
Granted, that I only remember that because I wrote something about Trouba like 3 years ago, and I was like going through his partners in Winnipeg before he got to the Rangers. But yeah, the point is, he has been fundamentally miscast. Trouba is not a defensive defenseman, but you have put him with offensively inclined partners and then been left here wondering, why isn't this working? Why is the guy who's not good at defense not playing good defense? And everyone is so confused. It's really not this hard. It's really not. Again, I'm not saying I'm good at this. I'm just saying if you watch, you can tell Jacob Trouba is not good at defense.
Yeah. That's what we've done for the past 3 seasons is watch every minute of this godforsaken team. And also not only watched, but also, dove into the numbers, we do both, right? It's getting both gives you a better picture of of what is going on in the overall, right? And when you watch the game and you realize, oh yeah, Jacob Trouba bad, and then you look at the numbers that suggest, oh yeah, Jacob Trouba's bad. Do both, do one, do both. Both will give you the same conclusion that he's not good defensively. And I don't care how many sweet nothings you have to whisper into my ear that he's a leader and then he hits people and that he cares and that he's big and that people are afraid of playing against him. Whatever. None of that tells me that he's good at defense because he's not. And people lead with he hits people. People lead with that because they know they can't talk about his defense. They know that. People are not all stupid. People watch Jacob Trouba and they realize, oh yeah, he's a nothing in the defensive end, but man, does he hit people? So, at least he's doing that. When someone talks about a defenseman, whether that be Trouba or whoever it is, and they lead with something other than his defensive abilities, that person is full of it, and the player in question can't play defense. Just is what it is.
All right. They're playing the Devils tonight. This is a good measuring stick. Well, we're going to gauge the level of recovery, we'll say, from the weekend. Last week was a tumultuous week. There was a lot going on. There was an increased scrutiny. Generally speaking, one of the barometers, one of the gauges I like to use for how dire a situation is when the NHL.com team reporters start actually being critical of the players on the team. That's one of my bellwethers because those are usually the last people to turn their opinions against someone. And to see critiques of the Rangers defense in zone from those people tells me that, we're reaching a Rubicon here, that there is a point of no return, even for people who work for the league. So tonight's a measuring stick. Devils haven't played great as of late. Their last 2 games out were a little bit clunky. The Rangers haven't played great hockey in probably close to 3 weeks at this point. You got 2 days. You're coming off a day off. Please, for the love of God, just don't get embarrassed. Just don't get embarrassed. I'm not even asking to win the game. I am saying go out there and play a competitive hockey game, force the Devils to play some defense, maybe target the 19-year-old who weighs 184 pounds in the corners. If you can dump the puck past Luke Hughes and make him go get it, you should do that a few times. Put pressure on defenders and actually make them play defense. That's how you take advantage of teams like the Devils. Force them to play defense. Don't let them get to their speed. The Rangers are not a fast team, but you can mitigate speed if you actually work. Will the Rangers actually work for it? That's why we're going to play the game, Andrew.
Yeah, that's right.
That'll do it for this week's edition of Liberty Blue. If you could be so kind, please subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching over on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, hit the alarm bell. Andrew and I will talk to you guys next week, or if there is a significant transaction or firing in the next several days, talk to you guys then.
Later.